Alright guys, that's Kremp again. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far with all sorts of cheating drama happening over the last couple of days. We did not necessarily expect this name to be back on the agenda. Jimbo, one of the most infamous Call of Duty players ever, got banned a couple of years ago, as we well remember now, for the Challengers World Championship at the time. Has potentially been spotted grinding out Valorant as well. Different account, different name. He's tried this before elsewhere. Maybe he's now doing it in Valorant as well. There was an interesting video last night potentially exposing this whole situation. Whether he's cheating on that side as well is a totally different question, but Clayster, among other pros, are giving their perspective on what the hell is going on with this guy again. Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into today. Thought it was kind of remarkable. We talked about BO7 yesterday in quite some detail, that the game is still going to come out on the older consoles. BO7 on PS4, Xbox One, consoles that are like over a decade old. I know that, you know, obviously this used to be a thing back in the day as well before the new consoles even came out, but still, the fact that they've got to do the ports for those old games maybe takes some attention away from, you know, where we would like the attention potentially to be. But let's talk about the cheating stuff, right? Because it's been a big conversation topic in the last few days. Nadeshot's not been happy about it. He did a couple of videos on the matter on Twitter. We know that Scump and lots of the other guys have switched over quite rapidly to Splitgate 2, you know, maybe for other reasons than just because they're fed up of COD, but frankly, a lot of these players are fed up of COD. The big drama as well has been that some of the players switching to console, this used to be the strategy, right? If you were Havoc and you wanted to actually play ranked and not run into hackers every single game, you would switch to console and you would be able to escape the hackers. But, you know, the cross gameplay stuff has been here, and we're now starting to see cheaters on console as well. You know, back in the day, you wouldn't really see, you know, you wouldn't see cheaters on console precisely. You would see like modders, you know, people that bring up the mod menu or whatever. And to be fair, they could do whatever they wanted. If they wanted to wall a hack or, you know, just shoot the gun once and you'd die all the way across the map, it would happen, right? We've all kind of been there back in the day. But at least that was pretty blatant and straightforward, whereas this one, you know, we've got players turning on the aim hacks just straight up on console, just like we've seen over the last few years on PC. And this is the thing, right? For guys like Havoc or players that have tried to escape some of the cheating drama and the cheating problems, they go to console to make it happen, and they run into stuff like this where the guy's, you know, sliding around the corner and, you know, hitting some crispy headshots, let's say. I don't know. Is this legit? Is this not legit? Anytime that you've got a player on the other side just snapping on your head and hitting every single headshot, it's more than likely, you know, there's something more to it than that, because nobody actually plays the game like this. So Havoc, of course, frustrated about that, understandably so. There was also this yesterday. So Octane's account, the 12th best COD player ever, and maybe that's where Attach put him on his list or something, but you know, Octane's certainly up there as one of the greatest COD players of all time, certainly in that kind of conversation. He can't play the game anymore. He's been effectively blacklisted, well, not even blacklisted, because they've literally told him that he's been banned from Black Ops 6 and Warzone. Your account is in a limited matchmaking state due to a potential violation. Unfortunately, we are unable to inform you when the account will exit this limited state. You may check here periodically. So, you know, what is a potential violation? More than likely, what's happening here, because I've seen it with other players before as well, is that Octane cooked someone. He got reported for cheating or whatever, because human turret and all that. And then the game's investigating him for potentially being kind of dodgy. And this has happened for years at this point. You got top-level players. They're the ones that are getting caught out because you got people cheating. Activision are, I guess, trying to counter the cheaters, but it means that you get players like Octane that are getting, you know, done in. And look, I'm not saying that you should necessarily whitelist all the pros or the, you know, the accounts of the pros, because maybe you then get into a position where, you know, we've got a Jimbo V2 situation we'll get to here in a second. But still, you know, it's just not a good look when you've got world champions, like legends of the scene, in players like Octane, getting effectively shadow banned from the game or whatever because of a potential cheating violation, when we know full well that's not what's going on. And if any of the developers actually went in here, they would know that very, you know, very easily as well. So it's a remarkable situation. Obviously, Zuma's in the reply saying like vouch and all this, and Octane was obviously bouncing back on that one as well. But let's talk about the big cheating cheating drama of the day, and that involves a familiar face here in the Call of Duty space. Not this one, but actually a guy in the replies. This is pretty funny. The Splitgate CEO was talking about how, we had like an $80 bundle in the game, and that was because they hired the former head of monetization from COD, who was, in words, very aggressive on monetization, which should not really be much of a surprise. But this, in the replies here, because he was doing the rounds on the day, was Brian Sabman, also known as Jimbo. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with the story of Jimbo, it's rather entertaining. He was, not a great player. He was a notable player. He was on the Vanguard Legion team with Johnny and Donnie Temp and that for a little bit of time. And, he played okay. He wasn't terrible, but, he wasn't a player quite of the caliber to stay around the CDL for too long. He then, certainly in 2023, started playing in Modern Warfare 2 season in the Challenger side and was playing with Classic and some other guys. And I remember aBeZy told a pretty funny story of when he would play scrims with Jimbo, this being Classic, of course, who was at the time FaZe's substitute. He'd be like, damn, this guy's out of control. Jimbo's so good. Like, this might be one of the best players that I've ever played with in my life. I can't believe this guy isn't, in the league. I can't believe he's not a champion. Like, how is this guy so good? That was the question at the time. Then, fast forward a few months, we turn up at the time, June 2023, so pretty much 2 years ago now, to the Challengers World Championship. And Jimbo was banned in the middle of the tournament. Now, the story goes that it's pretty unlikely he plugged in a USB stick and started cheating on LAN. What seems to be the case is that he was cheating in some capacity. I don't think it would be aim hacks. At the end of the day, Jimbo can clearly shoot straight. He's clearly a talented player on some level, and we'll see that even in the Valorant side. We'll get to here potentially in a second. But yeah, if you give a player with serious talents any sort of additional help, I don't know what he was using, but if it was like a small wall hack or something to see where the enemy red dots were in certain situations, then, it was a big issue. And he was seemingly using that online in their qualifiers. Maybe that would explain some of the stories from Classic. Turned up to LAN, presumably wasn't necessarily cheating there, but his account, in the same way that Octane's account just got hit for a potential violation, his account was then banned in the middle of the tournament for allegedly hacking online. Now, at the time, this was wild, right? Because there was a game here that was happening of, what was this map called again? Fortress, Albagra Fortress Hardpoint, and they were playing Yeez, Purge, Gwinn, and GodRx, and the team was Classic, Gravity, Geo, and of course Jimbo on Orbit at the time. And yeah, he got basically kicked out the map mid-map, and they were wondering, okay, what's going on? Are we going to be able to replay this game once he gets back in the game? And Jimbo at the time, known as Jimbo La. Now, just keep in mind that Jimbo has gone under various identities over the last couple of years, largely as a result of some of this type of stuff. So at the time, it was Jimbo or Jimbo La, and he says, Activision said they'll unban me. No reasons why I got banned, he says. But, well, shortly afterwards, that was clearly not the case, and then it was kind of exposed what happened, and Jimbo was effectively exiled from the scene. We then have to fast forward to April of 2024, when Jimbo had effectively signed up, even under his old gamer tag, he'd signed up as Jimbo to play in a Challengers Cup. Now, Jimbo notably came back as a player called Lau. I think, he tried to change his name to Lau briefly. That didn't really work. People were like, it's still Jimbo. So, what do you really expect us to do? Jimbo signed up to play in this weekend's Challengers Cup at the time. It was then made pretty clear by the guys over at the league, Spencer Peterson, Spinner Spence. No story here. He is not eligible to participate. Because it was kind of unclear, was he banned forever? What was the details of the ban and these type of things? But, yeah, he tried to compete again in COD. That never happened because he did ban for competing at Champs. So, fast forward to the present day, after they all confirmed that he was cheating and he'd been forfeited from Champs, his team was therefore disqualified and Jimbo was nowhere again to be seen. We then get this video yesterday that Rohan God puts out on the Valorant side. Now, just to keep in mind, first of all, there's no direct evidence that he's been cheating in Valorant, but he has been #1 ranked Radiant, and in Valorant it is more difficult to cheat, sure, but it's not impossible, right? The anti-cheat in Valorant is stronger, definitely, but it is possible still to cheat. There are, hackers occasionally that do hit the timeline, and it's not particularly uncommon. So effectively what Rohan is suggesting is that this player HyDra is the same as Jimbo, right? And the point that he's making is like, look, Jimbo was banned for COD, for cheating. He shouldn't be able to be in, the Valorant world at all, full stop, let alone play on this particularly high level and, potentially be able to qualify even further up the order, because in the Valorant world, there's something called Premier, and if you do well in Premier, you can potentially qualify for Tier 2, and then it gives you opportunities to get back in business. So effectively, his discussion here circulated around the idea that these two individuals are effectively the same individuals, right? Now, this wouldn't be like a massive surprise. The Flank did a tweet about it and said that he's been allegedly caught hacking once again, this time on Valorant. As I say, that isn't fully true, not yet, necessarily. But the point is that I think this tweet was then deleted. But the question is whether these are two, one and the same. Because we've seen this before from Jimbo, right? Coming back on a different account. He was Jimbo, then he was Jimbo La, then he was Lao, and then, of course, now he's potentially going by a different name again. That in and of itself wouldn't be a massive surprise. And also the argument might be, well, once a cheater, always a cheater, right? So Rohan goes through a number of bits of evidence that this account name, HyDra, is actually just Jimbo. And there's a few interesting pieces of information in the video, such as this screenshot that appears to show him as Jimbo from just one frame in one of a video. And there's also the argument that even to the present day, HyDra, you can't really see this guy's face when he streams and stuff, but if you mention anything in his chat about Jimbo, about COD, about Call of Duty, then you will get either just straight up banned or the message will be deleted and, all this type of stuff. So, he did go to his chat here and type in a couple of things. Automod flagged it, and then shortly afterwards he got banned. And then there was further kind of evidence here going to some of his Steam profiles, and either suggesting that there's a very dedicated impersonator. There was also a clip from a video a few years ago where he had a name Brian1T, and his real life name is Brian, right, Jimbo? So Bryan. There was also a profile that had, was French Canadian, and that's where he is from, Jimbo, from Quebec. And if you look at this Steam profile, you'll see lots of names, including Jimbo on here as well. So there seems to be some compelling evidence that this individual, Jimbo, is back under a different name and now deciding to make it work in a different esport. Now, whether exactly he's going to pull the same tricks in Valorant as well, it may be somewhat more challenging. But it is also kind of frustrating to see a player who, if he's not cheating in Valorant yet, or maybe never will do, who knows, but clearly a talented player, talented gamer, but because of what he did in the Call of Duty world, that's now following him, and for very good reason, into other esports as well. As Phoenix says, former coach of a few teams in COD Pro seeing Jimbo trying to compete in another esport, what are we talking about here? And as Clay says, if Jimbo really faked selling his accounts and has just been cheating in Valorant ever since, honestly, you've got to tip the dedication to not actually learning how to be a good gamer, right? So, Clayster talking about it. Of course, it's a story on Jimbo that lives long in the memory of the Call of Duty scene. And maybe there's even more to come on this story in the future, right? But, the cheating drama in COD is never going to go away. This is a massive story back in the day. And now we're talking about maybe Jimbo doing it elsewhere. Are there any players in the COD space looking to follow in Jimbo's footsteps in the Call of Duty world? We certainly talked about it for some time, cheating in challenges, cheating elsewhere being a major issue, and, wouldn't rule any of those ideas out quite as of yet. But hopefully the league can continue to get on top of this. Very much intrigued to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.